302,000 people just asked to leave Canada, and the Prime Minister hasn't said a single word. Not a press conference, not a statement, not even a tweet. That silence is not strategy. That silence is a confession. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what it confesses and why it may be the most consequential political mistake made on Canadian soil in a generation. If you've been following this story, hit like right now so this reaches the people who need to see it. On May 4th, volunteers with the StayFree Alberta movement walked into the Elections Alberta office in Edmonton carrying boxes, physical boxes, stacked with petition sheets bearing 301,734 verified signatures. The legal threshold to force government action was 178,000. They nearly doubled it. Every single one of Alberta's 63 provincial ridings was represented. Not Calgary, not oil country, every riding. That geographic spread is the detail most coverage buried. And it changes everything about how this story should be read. Now here is the number that no headline led with, and it should have. Because this is where the story stops being about a petition and starts being about a country. Recent polling shows 28% of Albertans now support outright independence. That sounds manageable until you see what sits beside it. Another 31% say they would consider voting yes, depending on the economic terms. Do the math. Less than half of Albertans, exactly 41%, are firm no votes. That means the outcome of any referendum isn't determined. It isn't leaning one way. It is wide open. And the people in Ottawa who should be responding to that reality have chosen silence. Share this if you think 300,000 Canadians deserve at least an answer. Prime Minister Mark Carney has said nothing. His Natural Resources Minister called the petition, and I want you to hear this exact phrase, a distraction from real issues facing Canadians. A distraction. 302,000 signatures, 8 months of organizing, every riding in the province, and Ottawa's official response is that it's a distraction. If you sat in a boardroom and tried to write the single sentence most likely to accelerate a separatist movement, you could not do better than that one. But here is what most coverage is completely missing. This is not a protest. Alberta didn't just collect signatures. Alberta built infrastructure. 3 years ago, in December 2022, Premier Danielle Smith passed the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act. That law gives Alberta the legal authority to refuse enforcement of federal policies deemed harmful to provincial interests. Ottawa challenged it in court. The case is still active. Critics called it a backdoor to secession. At the time, that sounded dramatic. Today, with 302,000 signatures delivered to provincial authorities, it sounds like preparation. The Sovereignty Act established the legal principle. The petition extends it. If the relationship with Ottawa can't be fixed from within, Alberta has the legal and political framework to begin leaving it. The architecture isn't theoretical. It's already partially built. And a timeline is now attached to it. If Elections Alberta verifies the signatures within the 60-day window, the petition moves to the provincial legislature, where Premier Smith's party holds 49 of 87 seats. If the legislature approves, Alberta could see a referendum ballot as early as October 2026. That is 5 months away. Not a future scenario, a calendar date. And now stay with me here, because this is where the story leaves Canada and enters Washington. Alberta exports nearly 3 million barrels of oil per day to the United States. Most of it flows through pipelines into Midwest refineries. If Alberta separated, every one of those energy agreements would require renegotiation. An independent Alberta would have the third largest oil reserves on Earth and a land border with Montana. It would be the wealthiest new nation in the Western Hemisphere by GDP per capita. Texas Governor Greg Abbott told Fox News in March that his state would welcome stronger ties with Alberta. The State Department called it an internal Canadian matter. That's the public position. Behind closed doors, every relevant office in Washington is tracking this daily. And here is the detail that reframes the last 6 months of North American politics entirely. The Trump administration held direct meetings with Alberta separatist leaders in Washington in January. At the time, it looked provocative. Now, with 302,000 signatures on record, it looks like preparation. Trump's approach to Canada has followed a single consistent logic throughout this entire series. If you can't work with the Prime Minister, you work around him. And working around him means building relationships with the provinces that already want out. This is the part of the story that requires you to understand something most people get wrong about how countries actually come apart. They don't break because people are angry. Anger fades. Countries fracture when the economic calculation stops working. When a region runs the numbers for 60 years and the answer keeps coming back wrong. Alberta contributes roughly $20 billion more to the federal system each year than it receives back in federal spending. In 2023 alone, the net transfer was $19 billion. Quebec received $13 billion in equalization payments that same year, while actively blocking Alberta pipeline projects. Ontario received infrastructure funding, while Alberta's pipelines were canceled. This is not ideology. This is arithmetic. And arithmetic doesn't fade with time. It accumulates. What made staying rational for 6 decades was the bundle of benefits that came with being Canadian. A shared currency, diplomatic relationships, military protection, the stability of a large integrated market. Those benefits have been eroding. The trade war with Washington has shaken economic certainty. The China deal created diplomatic turbulence. The housing collapse destroyed household wealth. And Ottawa's response to each of these crises has landed in Alberta as confirmation of a story Albertans have been telling themselves for decades. You are not our priority. Carney's silence is a calculation. He is betting the signatures fail verification, or that Smith refuses to call a referendum, or that the persuadable 31% choose the uncertainty of independence over the discomfort of staying. It is a gamble. And it is a gamble placed on the assumption that Albertans will keep choosing a system that hasn't delivered for them over a system that might. History says that assumption usually holds. History also says that when it fails completely. And 302,000 people putting their names on a document that says they want to leave is a signal that the margin is thinner than Ottawa is willing to admit. There is something about this story that I think deserves to be said plainly. Polls are passive. Someone calls, you answer, you move on. Signatures are different. You have to seek out the petition. You have to read the question. You have to physically add your name to a document that says you want your province to leave the country you were born in. 302,000 people did that deliberately across 8 months in every corner of Alberta. That is not frustration, that is a decision. And responding to that decision with silence communicates exactly one message. You don't matter enough for an answer. That is the message Alberta has been receiving from Ottawa for 40 years. And now 302,000 people have responded in kind. I don't know if Alberta will leave Canada. The constitutional barriers are significant. The economic uncertainty is real. The majority isn't there yet. But the distance between a petition and a referendum vote is shorter than the distance between frustration and a petition. And Alberta just crossed the harder line. 5 months to October, 60 days for verification, and a prime minister who has not said a word. Countries don't break with a single crack. They break with silence. The silence of a government that doesn't answer when 302,000 of its citizens formally ask to leave. This story is developing daily, and we are covering every move. If this gave you something the headline didn't, tap the like button once. That single tap is what tells the algorithm this matters and gets it in front of people who need to understand what is actually happening here. Drop your perspective in the comments below. If you are Albertan, I want to know what this feels like from inside the province. If you are from another part of Canada, tell me honestly whether you think this is real or whether it fades. And if you are American, tell me how this looks from your side of the border. Every one of those perspectives matters to this conversation. If you are not subscribed yet and you've made it to the end of this video, this channel covers the Canada fracture daily. The tariffs, the trade war, the separatist meetings in Washington, and now 302,000 signatures. This is one connected story, and we are at its turning point. Subscribe so you don't walk into the next chapter without the context that makes it make sense.